Okay, let's dive into this. We hear so much about artificial intelligence as, just code, just software, this abstract brain in the cloud. But today, we're going to get real. We're going to look at the massive, physical, and incredibly thirsty reality behind it all. And it all kicks off with a question that sounds, well, a little bit crazy. How is it even possible that every time you flush your toilet, you might actually be helping to cool down one of the world's most powerful AIs? I know it sounds nuts, but stick with me because the answer is genuinely mind-blowing. You see, this whole story isn't really about algorithms or software at all. It's about raw power, it's about water, and it's about the very real physical limits of our planet. AI isn't just some program running in the ether. It's a thermodynamic beast, and man, it has an insatiable appetite. And to really get our heads around this, we have to go to Memphis, Tennessee. We're looking at a project called Colossus. This is the gigantic supercomputer data farm built for literally one purpose: to train Elon Musk's AI, which is known as Grok. And the scale of this place? Well, that's where our story really takes off. So what's inside Colossus? Well, you're looking at over 100,000 of these things, Nvidia H100 GPUs. Now, each one of these is an absolute powerhouse on its own, but when you cram them all together, they become the source of an almost unbelievable amount of heat. So get this. Every single one of those 100,000 GPUs can chew through up to 1,000 watts of power. Now, when you start multiplying that out, you quickly realize you're not just running a computer anymore. You're basically trying to manage a small volcano that's erupting with constant, intense heat. So how in the world do you cool a volcano? Well, you do it with water. A lot of water. To keep Grok from literally melting itself into a puddle, Colossus needs up to 5 million gallons of water every single day. That right there is the core challenge we're going to unpack today. Okay, so you've got this immense challenge, right? You'd think the first major roadblock would be some crazy new technology. But for Colossus, the biggest problem right out of the gate wasn't engineering. It was good old-fashioned red tape. Just look at this comparison. A typical data center on this scale takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years to build. You've got to navigate this marathon of zoning applications, permits, public hearings, you name it. Colossus was up and running in just 122 days. I mean, how is that even possible? Well, they found a loophole. You could almost call it a cheat code. Instead of building everything from scratch and fighting that multi-year battle with bureaucracy, they figured out a way to just sidestep the entire process by taking over an existing facility. And this is just a brilliant strategy. They went out and bought an old Electrolux appliance factory. Now, why would they do that? Because it was already zoned for heavy industrial use, which is absolutely mission critical. That means fewer restrictions on loud machinery, and crucially, it already had a high-pressure natural gas line running to it. And that is a key piece of the puzzle we're about to get to. So they had the perfect location. But that just led to the next huge problem: the local power grid. It just couldn't handle the load. And upgrading it, that would take years, time they absolutely did not have. And here's the key thing to understand. It wasn't that the power grid was broken or failing, not at all. It's just that public utilities, they work on these multi-year timelines. AI development, on the other hand, moves in weeks. Those two speeds are just fundamentally incompatible.
So the solution they came up with was just as audacious as their timeline. They just built their own power plant. Seriously, they rolled in 14 of these Voltagrid mobile turbines, hooked them right up to that pre-existing natural gas line, and boom, they had a private grid. They completely bypassed the long wait, problem solved.
But that brings us to the biggest challenge of them all, even bigger than power, and that's water. Where on earth do you get 5 million gallons of it every single day without completely devastating the local community? Well, the answer is pretty unconventional. This is the multi-million-gallon question, right? Sourcing this much water has massive environmental stakes. And the most obvious answer, the one you'd think of first, was actually the most dangerous one. See, the city of Memphis gets all its drinking water from something called the Memphis Sand Aquifer. Tapping into that would have been a complete catastrophe. Not only would it start to deplete the water supply for the actual citizens, but the cooling process, which involves evaporation, concentrates any naturally occurring arsenic. So you're risking this massive environmental breach. It was a complete non-starter. So if you can't use the clean water right under your feet, what do? Well, you use another cheat code. Only this time it's an $80 million one. You build your very own custom water recycling plant. And here it is. This is the answer to that crazy question from the beginning. They buy gray water. Yeah, the wastewater that goes down your toilet, your drains, directly from the city's water treatment plant. They literally pipe in the city's poo water and recycle it themselves. But wait, how can you use corrosive wastewater to cool super-sensitive electronics? Well, this two-stage system is just brilliant. The GPUs themselves, they're cooled by a completely sealed, closed loop of perfectly pristine distilled water that never gets contaminated. Then, the heat from that clean loop is transferred to a totally separate open loop. That's the one that circulates the recycled wastewater. And it's that poo water that gets heated up and evaporated into the atmosphere, carrying all that heat away. The two water sources never actually touch. It's ingenious. This quote really just gets to the heart of the whole thing. The story of Colossus shows us that the real bottleneck for AI's growth isn't compute power anymore. It's the physical resources of planet Earth. So, if Earth itself is the problem, what's the ultimate solution? Well, the end game for this kind of computation might not be on this planet at all. I mean, if you're constantly fighting against the constraints of land and power and water, the only truly logical next step is to go where those constraints just disappear. As we've seen, every single data center on Earth is a constant battle against these three limits. You're always fighting for water, you're fighting for a spot on the power grid, and you're fighting for land. But in space, the rules of the game change completely. Just think about it for a second. In orbit, you don't need millions of gallons of water. You just radiate heat directly into the freezing vacuum of space. You don't need to buy up land, and you have access to limitless 24/7 solar power. All of those pain points we just spent this whole time talking about, they just melt away. And that brings us to our final, kind of mind-bending thought. The engineering behind Colossus is an absolute masterpiece of problem-solving on a planetary scale. But it also suggests that for AI to really reach its full, unimaginable potential, it might have to leave us behind. And that poses the ultimate question. If AI's destiny is written in the stars, what becomes of its birthplace?